My name is Silva Laukkanen. I'm a white, middle-aged woman. I have a blonde, curly hair on top and shaved on the sides and on the back. I'm wearing black earrings that have some geometry on them. And I'm having glasses that are see-through rims. I'm wearing a black shirt and a cardigan, black and white cardigan, and I'm sitting in front of a white wall. Welcome on behalf of X-Dance Festival 2021. It is our day 6 and it has been quite an amazing festival. If you could give your location where you currently work in the chat to either me or Kaarina. Kaarina, you want to wave your hand? As we need this information for the Erasmus Plus grant report. This is also going to be recorded, this session. We have automated closed captions, which you can access on the toolbar in the bottom. It has 2 CCs, and we are joined today by Sally, our British Sign Language interpreter. I'm going to hand over to my co-moderator, Kaarina. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all here. And welcome to this panel discussion from my part also. So my name is Kaarina Koistinen, and I will now audio describe myself. So I'm a white young woman, and I have brown middle-length hair and green eyes and a green shirt. And I'm the co-moderator of this panel discussion. And yeah, I've been the producers of the Erasmus Plus project, Dance Out of Line, which is one of the, what's the name? The founders of this panel. And we will start this panel discussion with a little thing with everyone. So you can now, if you feel comfortable, close your eyes for a moment. And if you don't want to close your eyes, you can let them rest. You don't need to focus on the screen. You can just let your eyes rest for a moment. Soften your gaze. And then take a deep breath. And feel your skin touching the air around your body. And take another deep breath. And take a moment to memorize. Have you ever felt excluded? Have you ever felt excluded? And how does that memory feel in your body? And then take a deep breath. And with your exhale, let that sensation go. And now I hand it over to Silva. You can still keep your eyes closed.
This is Silva speaking. You can do a little bit of a shake or bounce or brush, something to let that go. Now think about a time that you felt included. And how did that feel in your body? Think about a time that you felt included. How is that feeling in your body? And maybe even where do you feel it in your body? What's that sensation? And I'm going to count to 3, and I'm inviting you to make a movement for that sensation. 1, 2, 3. Included. And you can let it go. Thank you so much for joining us for that. I'm going to hand you back to Kaarina, who is going to introduce our panelists.
Yes, so now you can open your eyes. So yeah, this panel discussion, which name is Inclusive Pedagogies, going forward, backward, or just standing still. It looks on the role of inclusion in education systems through the different educational systems, like primary to the higher education in Finland, UK and Uganda. So we have, quite broad view to this. And we suggest participants to do a reflection about from their own perspective to this huge and big subject. And we look can we find some new common denominators that can also bring us together in this subject, even though we are from different locations. To also find how could the future inclusive pedagogies look like. Yeah, so this is in short, and yeah. So we will now introduce the panelists, and I will hand this over to Eeva Anttila. Can you introduce and audio describe yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be part of this important panel. Thank you for the invitation. I work at the University of the Arts Helsinki in the Theatre Academy as professor in dance pedagogy. I am more than middle-aged. My hair is almost gray. I wear eyeglasses all the time and they have dark rims. I have little earrings, golden round earrings. I have a ponytail and gray sweater or cardigan. And underneath I wear a blue t-shirt with a V-shape opening. Thank you. And I hand it over to Nora.
Hi, I am a 31-year-old white skin-colored woman. I'm sitting in a wheelchair. I have 2 tops. It's a gray one and then dark green top on me. And I also have ponytail and quite white hair. And behind me it's a white wall. And there's also little bit my wheelchair behind me. It's a colored black. And I give a turn to Adam.
Thank you, Nora. My name is Adam Benjamin. I'm a white, although slightly tanned, thanks to a lot of gardening, male of 60-something years. I have a small grayish tanned brownie goatee and a mustache, and spectacles, and I'm seated in a room in my house. I'm wearing a white t-shirt, and behind me is a white wall with some wooden shelves on which there are some old books and little items from various countries that I visited. I think that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so I will introduce Joseph de Bandeke, who is joining us via recorded videos. So Joseph is a dancer and dance teacher from Uganda, and he will audio describe himself in the video. He has a physical disability, and his background is in wheelchair racing and basketball playing. And he has been a role model for many people in Uganda because of this sport background, but also because he is nowadays raising awareness about disability and inclusion through dance. And now, Silva, you will put the video where Joseph tells us more about himself and his background.
I forgot to unmute myself. You wouldn't hear anything, so let's start again. Here we go. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
Thank you for this opportunity. And my name is Tewandeke Joseph. And I love smiling. I would say that. I have hair, like I have dreadlocks on my head. Yes, I have a not very big beard, but yes. And yeah, I have round eyes. They're brown. I did not start with dance. So I have a friend called Robert, and he invited me for some classes. And this is where I got introduced about dance. And I found it very, very interesting because I realized everyone can dance, they can express themselves, they can use their challenges to perform it, like to show it out there. I found it very interesting, and then I started dancing. Then I went for classes. I started going for different classes, workshops to know more about dance. I started doing research. I found it very, very, very interesting. Then I started putting it out there. We started and we created a dance group called Splash. And I wanted, after creating this group, we realized that there is a very big gap between people with disabilities and normal dancers. So there was a very big gap. Then we realized this is a challenge, and we found how can we solve this. So we said our group should base on removing that gap, doing inclusion. So actually our group is inclusion, and I'm trying to remove this sense that people with disabilities are supposed to perform for free, which is not true. And I've created pieces to show them that it's not out of sympathy. The pieces are really nice, and like after performing, you will need to pay something after negotiating, of course. So people have got inspired out of that. Like, oh, you can get money out of this, Yes. So we lack education about dance in Uganda. It's also a very big gap. Like, it's not like in Europe, because I also had to travel to Europe to get some more studies. Yes, but when here at home, we have dance schools, but they only focus on people who don't have disabilities. Yes, so it will be also so hard to get like education about disability dance. Yeah, it's not yet. It's something actually I've started creating, because now when when they do festivals, they call us out of sympathy, like let's invite them. How will they feel when we've not invited them? So then they have to invite me to tell them how people are going to work with people with disabilities. Still, like, I'll say this, like mainstream schools, people who are not like don't have disabilities, they also have this fear that should I touch someone with disabilities? Won't I be her? So dance is a language. So I speak a language someone doesn't understand. So I need to keep telling them my language so that we can connect. So yeah, still all that has to be education. Education, still everything runs back to education. As you would see, mindset, still you need to educate them, create more awareness.
So there was the introduction of Joseph, and also many, many important points already. And as he said in the end of the video, that everything runs back to education. Well, it's a very good bridge for also this, that why, like, we are now here with this panel discussion, which is funded by this Erasmus Plus project, because the this Erasmus Plus project, which is funding this panel discussion, is called the Dance Out of Line, and it was created in Austria by dance company MAD. And there is 5 countries involved, like Finland, Italy, Hungary, and Slovakia, and Austria. Or yeah. Yeah, and so there is, in all the countries, there is these inclusive teams who are going to schools and doing these kind of workshops and research. How can these kind of inclusive teams like educate people about these important things? And in Finland, these workshops have been organized in primary schools. And Noora Vastinen who is here in the panel. Yeah, you can say, so yeah. So she has been part of the team, like as an artist. And here's some numbers about the results of this project. So there has been 2 rounds of these workshops, and we have reached around 330 children, 19 teachers, 18 classes, and 6 schools. And in the second round, and this is still going, and we have been going through the corona, even though it has been quite like changed during this time. We have reached 288 children, 18 teachers, and 14 schools. Yeah, and we have been focusing mainly on the schools where it's like children who don't have special needs, but then in some classes have been for the people like children with special needs. So yeah, this is about like the statistics side of it. And now, Noora, I have like a question for you about this specific project. So can you tell us about the strengths of this project and things that worked for you and where you would hope this to go in the future?
Yes, thank you, Karna. Yeah, I have been from the beginning in part of this team, teaching and also performing. And I think that one of the most important things is that the teaching team is always like inclusive, that there's one teacher performer who has disability and one who don't have disability. So children can have the image, they can experience that also people with disabilities or with a wheelchair can be a teacher and can help them, because normally the people with disabilities they are more like seeing like that everyone else are helping them, but now that the person who has a disability can also teach them. So I think that is the really big thing. And our pedagogical choice has been like to open the and give the space and time for the children to ask questions and ask something, be curious, and because maybe they haven't discussed about disabilities. Maybe somebody has said that don't ask, or but now we have give more courage to them to, now it's the time and space that you can ask whatever you want, and creating this open kind of atmosphere. I think it's really important. About the inclusive dance, also and dance improvisation, it's also a new kind of mindset for the children, because mainly at the schools, sports and also art fields are really competitive. There's quite young children are who is the best and who can do something more there's some structures or some choreography, but then we have talked about that how you feel, how you sense things, and also be more present and from own experience, help them to realize how they feel things. So I think that is also one new thing for many people, that there's a time that no one don't say them that do this or do that, more like how you want to experience or do something. Yeah, and in the last year we have had mainly these workshops through Zoom platform, because we couldn't have a chance to go to the schools visiting. So we have created a new kind of online workshops, and the teacher is there with the kids in the classroom, and we just come through the Zoom video there. And it is also a new kind of thing for also us, also the children. And then of course it needs a lot of support from the class teacher, that we can focus and the kids can focus in a classroom. Yes, so it has been really inspiring, and I have learned a lot, and yeah, that's mainly.
Thank you, Nora.
Thank you.
Do you want to comment, Eva or Adam?
I think Nora's, touched on a lot of really key and important aspects of inclusive education or integrated education. The role of the disabled teacher as a role model, not just someone who's there to not even someone who's there to assist in teaching, but that they're leading the activity, I think is really, really key. And the other thing I think is this notion of education, which introduces to many students who just have never had an opportunity to explore what they think and feel. I mean, strange to say, isn't it, that that most children's experience in their school is not about learning to deal with what they feel. That's it's a side issue, and it's never really placed central to a child's education. And I think when this kind of work comes into, be it school or college or university, there's this shift of emphasis about, well, what do you feel about these things? And then how do you respond? So I think, yeah, all very important stuff. And it's great to hear that you're doing the work, Nora. Great.
I had a question. Nora, what is the outcome that you would like to see? Like personally, what do you want to see that happens as a result of these visits and classes at schools?
Well, I wish that children can, how do I say it in English? I wish that they can be more like this kind of, not putting any boxes, like people, or like be more like we are all together and finding more things what yhdistää. Like
To connect.
To connect, yeah, and not like we are this and we are that, like because kids can be from quite young age, like in different groups, and this is this group and this is that group, and we don't talk to each other, and comes like this. So also this kind of inclusive dance, and this can also, like in bigger picture, can bring children together and find the idea that even we are different and even we look different, we can still have a lot of common things. So I think that, and also like one, but I just forgot to say that to give them more language or help them try to express themselves and speak things, puhua asioista oikeilla nimillä.
To talk about things with their right names.
Yeah, so then there is any taboos if you can give them like that you
Name.
can name. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a follow-up question. Did you use dance as the context of bringing people together? There were dance classes that you brought into the schools.
Yeah, yes, I think that in all our like exercises, there like somehow it's the main idea, like bringing them together, and also like sometimes individual things, but mainly like together. Yeah.
And do you feel like there is extra power when you use bodies and dance and movement in this form in school to bring kids together and ask those questions and name those things?
Yes, I feel, and then like, well, now we have been in Zoom, so we are a little bit more distant, but especially when we were in the school and I was there like physically in the place, so I felt that I am there, and then people can touch or feel, so and the kids can feel themselves. So it's like, yes, I think that this kind of activities, when they are together, and also with people with disabilities like me, when they are like really, so they can some kind of new kind of understanding thoughts, and I can see it in their face, or like something like, they are somehow understanding something.
Yeah, that's great. Eva or Adam, do you have anything to add or ask more questions?
No, all good.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nora.
Thank you.
So Adam, ready?
Yep.
You wrote in your, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's good.
You wrote in your book in 2002, titled Making an Entrance, Theory and Practice for Disabled and Non-Disabled Dancers. You say, and quote, "Today, with more and more schools and public buildings being made accessible, the future debate in dance is no longer going to center on the concrete steps that lead up to the studio, but on the technical ones that confront the disabled student when he or she gains access," end of quote. I feel like that is still so true. And you wrote this book in 2002. Unfortunately, I feel like this is so true. Later, you were also an integral part of designing the new performance space at the university in Plymouth, where you used to work. Did you also see a change in the sort of leadership and mindset about students with disabilities entering the dance program, or do you feel like it was more just the building? And what are your thoughts today about this idea that we might have fixed the concrete steps, at least to be better what comes to access, but what the things that maybe are still remaining inside the educational setting?
Yeah. I mean, you know, in the conversation that we had just a couple of days ago, you know, I hate to say it, but we're not in a great place in the UK, you know, in many ways, not the least being we've just separated ourselves from the Erasmus program by leaving the EU. So, but also I was talking about this shift in the way that higher education is now functioning in the UK, and the monetarization of our degree programs. And what that has led to is a closing of any smaller courses. So courses that can't attract large numbers of students are being cut. And as we know, contemporary dance and the arts are the first to suffer in these times. So a number of dance programs, including nearly all of the programs that were offering inclusive practice, are under threat or have already gone. So there are, you know, this is you know, it just feels a dreadful place in the UK at the moment. And dance in the more successful, bigger institutions, the conservatoires, they're succeeding by attracting huge numbers. And of course, all those of us who've worked in this field know that when you have lots and lots of students pushed into studios working, that's not an environment that is very conducive to inclusive practice. And the analogy, the analogy that I was drawing the other day is it's like, a monocrop versus rewilding, where, one thing is all about a monocrop of dancers that will feed the dance industry. And the other is about a very diverse artistic landscape that provides all kinds of new ideas. So we're struggling, I think it's fair to say. I think that there will be, I certainly haven't given up on the idea that we might find a way of introducing inclusive practice, but I think that right now it's going to be very hard, very hard. That said, it's a different environment to what it was 20 years ago. And there are dancers or dance students who are coming through who might challenge that and still apply for those kind of courses, those kind of more technical courses. But for me, it's a structure that is really problematic. The best structures in terms of inclusivity are programs that are very open to lots of approaches. So where students can build their courses of study, drawing on perhaps music, on theatre, arts, technology. So you've got a system which does exist in certain universities in certain countries, where you can more or less begin to build your course of the structure of your course to suit yourself. Those programs still do exist. I also think that inclusive practice is such a gift, in just the way that Nora has been explaining, that you can see kids' faces light up as they understand that this is something that is good for them, and that that will make them grow as people, as human beings. And I think maybe one of the really interesting things that's happening at the moment, with everything that we're going through with the pandemic, and with a growing awareness that young people are suffering in lots of different ways, and that the issues of well-being and mental health are beginning to be taken far more seriously. That we've got a generation of young people who have been subject to all kinds of pressures. And I think that our selling point, if you like, the thing that we have to offer at this moment, is something that all students, not just dance students, but all students should be able to have this experience as part of their education. And I think in some ways, maybe the next shift might be about saying that this is not just for dancers. This is about a humanizing experience that all young people need. And if we can then begin to say, well, if you've got a modular degree programs where students can do lots of different things, and I think this is more typical in America, where you have that no, maybe not.
I wish I would say, yeah.
But I think there are examples of modular programs where, if you're studying engineering, you could still take a module of inclusive dance, and those two things wouldn't be exclusive. Whereas when I was in teaching in the university, where there were engineering courses and there were marine biology courses and there were dentistry courses, those students would never have the opportunity to do an inclusive dance program. It wasn't an option. But I think that's the issue, is that this stuff is really about education in its most fundamental sense. It's about understanding what it means to be a human being. And it shouldn't be restricted just to dancers. It should be, the kids that you're working with, Nora, I'm guessing they're not dance students. They're just kids in schools, and they're getting an experience which is quite possibly life-changing. We've all come up against those moments of ignorance in young people. There's a project that there was a long time I was working in Europe, I can say that now, and meeting kids on the street, going out with groups of disabled dancers and non-disabled dancers in the streets, and being abused by other young people just in plain light of day. And you can only think that those young people haven't been educated. They've never had an opportunity, the kind of opportunity that they're getting with you, Nora, in school, where they lose that fear, because that's really all that they're expressing. I mean, it feels like something else when you're on the receiving end of it, but actually it's just fear. They're just frightened of these, different people, different bodies, probably different colored skins, So somewhere in their education system, they need to have different kinds of experiences. And we shouldn't, I guess, this is me as an idealist, is that it shouldn't just be restricted to the dancers. It should be more than that. So I guess what I'm saying is, okay, so our contemporary dance programs are being shut down. So where do we go with that? What do we do? Do we just say, oh, nothing then? Or do we say, oh, well, maybe we've got something very important to offer right now, as more young people are suffering from all sorts of, deprivation. I think, we're going to be looking at a deprived generation, deprived of the arts, deprived of touch, deprived of interaction, because we don't know how long this stuff's going to go on for, do we? That's
true. Thank you. I actually have to take back now, when I was listening to you, I realized, I actually, interdisciplinary studies are a big thing in the US. Yes, you can totally do that. And we talk about constantly how we can do it even more. So I am originally from Finland, but have lived 15 years in the US, and that's where my career is. I also wanted to say to you that I love the way I come across this idea often that, oh, everything in UK is so much better when it comes to inclusion and inclusive dance. And over these years, I've come like, well, some things are better, but it's not like this golden land of inclusive dance education. But then now when you said, all these inclusive dance education places are shutting down, I'm like, well, we didn't ever have any in the US. Like, I am pretty certain I can say there isn't a dance program in a higher education level that accepts students with disabilities. And the only cases that I know of are because there are individuals in that department who take that student under their wing. So it's not a systemic access. It's an access through individuals. Yeah. And I've been thinking what it is that makes us keep that higher education position in dance only for able-bodied people. And one of the things that I've been tossing around in my head is this idea of hierarchy. Like these institutions are quite hierarchical in their positions. And when you receive that position in that institution, and you need to do, for example, this idea of assessment. And what if you have a dance student in your class that don't do tandus with their legs, and you have to assist it, and you're like, oh, but I can't do that, and it is going to shake my position as a person with power, and put me in a more vulnerable position. So that's my thinking around like access. But for example, you had a student with a disability in the dance program, didn't you, Adam?
Yeah, we had several.
Yeah, okay.
And I mean, for some it worked really well. For others, it didn't. It crashed. We had one student who had a fairly torrid time and didn't succeed and dropped out. We had other students who came from have the experience of inclusive workshops, which are very supportive and very, holistic. And higher education is a whole different experience. So we had people who came from that lovely inclusive world and came into a degree program, and it was too tough. It was too hard. So and then we had others, we had another student with a profound disability. We had a number of different students with disabilities who did really well, and one who went on and did a master's degree, and then performed professionally. But I again, although I had, as you say, I had a hand in the design of the new theatre, and that is a wonderful, accessible building. But the program at Coventry, I think, had more success in shaping a whole staff group. So there was a much more kind of inclusive practice amongst the staff, with a terrible building. So you try and do things, and I think this the other bit of this is that we'll succeed in one area, and then it will crash in another, and then it will pick up again somewhere else. It's very much like, it's very disparate, and very, very difficult to maintain if it's not absolutely embedded. So it may be that the course at Plymouth one day, maybe in 10 years' time, will become a wonderful inclusive practice. That said, the moment I left, we were no longer able to run even the summer intensive was refused. We went to Exeter University. So it's, it very much depends on the overview within as you say, within a hierarchical structure, and what's welcomed and what's not. But I think, again, I'm sounding a little bit gloomy, but I think there are still a huge amount of grassroots youth programs running in the UK, and that generates lots of people kind of coming through into different fields. But most of the professional disabled dancers are not coming from HE training. They're coming from training within the dance companies. So they're coming through youth dance companies attached to Canduco or attached to Stopgap. That's where they're doing their training. And even, even someone like David Toole, he trained really through the company. He spent a year at Laban, but only just really. His real training was through the company. So that, in that respect, the dance companies themselves are taking on the responsibility of the educational pathways. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I feel that is definitely in US as well. Like this spring, all of the major professional dance companies were auditioning for disabled dancers at the same time in the US, because there is no trajectory like there is for us able-bodied, but there is no existing trajectories for people with disabilities to have that experience. Okay, Adam, I think we're running out of our time. I'm going to hand it over to Kaarina, and Kaarina is going to ask a question from Eva. Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Adam. And I say Ashley sent a question, but we can take them in the end. Thank you for the question. Yeah. So, Eva, you have been the team leader of arts at school, which is part of the 6-year Arts Equal Research project that investigated how the arts can support equal participation and learning in Finnish schools. The research investigated methods that would provide learning opportunities for all, improve the social atmospheres at schools, and impact pupils' well-being, particularly in marginalized social groups. So this was a little background. Could you say briefly how dance education played a part of this?
Well, we were a group of arts educators, mostly dance and from the fields of dance and music. So at this, my group, arts at school group, for once there was some kind of a balance between the art forms, that it was not dominated by the usually dominating arts fields of art. And because I was the group leader, and as a dance scholar, dance education scholar, and dance teacher, I gathered dance scholars and educators to my group who also have an extensive practical experience in the field. And this was funded by the so-called Strategic Research Council of the Finnish Academy. And it was actually the first program starting 2015 called Equality in Society, the program. There were 6 other projects. This was the only art project. And I think ever since, our project has been the only art project funded by the Strategic Research Council. I'm sorry about the dog. It's a little bit there in the background, but let's hope. So we were really excited when we got this very substantial funding. And in the program call, they required, or the description was to focus on the most groups that are most marginalized. And we tried to, in all arts equal groups, 6 of them, really tried to see where are the biggest gaps, so to say, where arts education or other art services are the groups who lack access to quality arts education. And since I was our group was working in a school context, we were looking at, for instance, schools with large number of newcomers to Finland, and also other marginalized groups. My work was mostly with newly arrived pupils in so-called preparatory education, which is the first year when immigrants' children come to Finland. They are placed in a class with other immigrants, and there might be like 13 is the number of students that can be in a group, and there can be 13 different languages in that group, and so on. But also, what was our aim, and what we did also, was to mix groups, so that from so-called regular instruction and from preparatory or then other special education groups, we mixed the classes to work together, to meet each other, to encounter each other, exactly in order to have them get to know each other, so that there would be not so big prejudice or fear even, so that it would be an experience that there's nothing so special in meeting people who are different. who look different, as Nora, you said. And I don't think that we had enough time to do this, but the short or relatively short so-called interventions that we did already showed that it doesn't take so much for young children to become familiar and comfortable with working with people that they didn't know beforehand, who seem to be different, but they are not. So the difference is something something else, because each person is different. Everybody, we have, as you said, Nora, similarities and differences that are not really based on the actual category that you are placed in, and gender category or ethnic background category or disabled category, whatever category. There are so many binary categories, and this is actually philosophically and theoretically our aim, or at least I thought that it was a main task to unravel this concept of difference, that it doesn't really refer to these binary categories, for instance. And there's this one citation by Deleuze, that Gilles Deleuze, French philosopher, that, or at least this citation is related to his philosophy, that identity is only a cloak that is put over real difference. So that whatever we wear, our skin color or our shape of the body or whatever visible, observable categories we display through our bodies, that is only something, or the actual clothes, because that's also often an identity marker. Those markers are just hiding the real difference, which is that we all are different, and we are differentiating all the time. We are becoming different all the time. Or that's at least the philosophy, and I like that philosophy, and I try to think how that could be made true in education, in dance education and in education. And it's not easy, because we in educational systems, categories are really important, or have been really important. Age categories, gender, and other categories, they really play a big role, and we should really get over that as soon as possible. But that's a big. But you asked what dance education had to do in this. So really, as we all probably know in this panel, participants and panelists and everyone, we really know what dance is about. It is about embodiment. It's about being engaged physically. And when we meet each other through dance, we meet each other as whole human beings, with everything that we have, our emotions, our affects, our energies, our dreams and hopes and thoughts and movement. And so the meeting is kind of comprehensive. It's something very profound when it's done with this kind of sensitive, holistic approach. Not all dance education is like that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and you already a bit like touched that point, but I would like to still ask, like, so is this like the process of this differentiating and like going, like leaving behind this like binaries, is that what like is like in that research, what can also be something to bring to this tertiary level dance education? And can you say something about that? Like,
yes, that is I think all levels, and logically, of course, it should start from the primary levels and so on, but it depends, of course, where we have some kind of power to change things, and I think the elementary, primary, secondary, the general school system is the hardest system to change, because it is so it has such a long history. It has such regulations, all kinds of laws and regulations. There's very little autonomy in comparison to, for instance, university education, where university programs and universities are relatively autonomous, not in terms of resources, but in terms of the content of the education. So we should be in higher education, we should really be taking the lead in making the change, I think, because we don't have that content coming from any kind of legislation. We are really basically autonomous. So yes, that should really be our task to do that.
Thank you, Eva. Do you want shortly to comment, Adam or Nora?
I was wondering, Eva, about the pathways for disabled students into higher education in Finland. I have no kind of knowledge about it, but whether there is any kind of
I don't, and I think there was a similar question in the chat. I didn't see the whole question, but yeah, it should come from the bachelor programs in dance and in arts, this entry point to this university system. So to my knowledge also, it doesn't really happen. I think I'm not really judging any program or any teacher, professor in the field. We are all in quite marginalized position in comparison to other art forms and to other universities. That is in a way also reality. So depends on from what perspective we look at this issue, but it is really true that there's no really entry point for disabled dancers to enter university dance programs in Finland.
Just one of the things that I did manage to do when I was within the academy was that I noticed that there were on campus quite a lot of disabled students, studying other programs. What I began to do quite successfully was to link my students with them for independent projects.
That's
so
great, yeah.
You have to find your ways around the apparent obstructions, and we had some wonderful student projects working with other disabled students in the university, just in that kind of informal way. And I nobody ever changed programs. We never stole anybody, but it was super valuable for my students and for that, for those disabled students from other programs who took it. And I think that's quite, it's almost introducing this independent study thing, but sort of unofficially. Yeah.
That sounds really, really great. Of course, in University of the Arts where I work, there are only art programs. So, and I don't think that we have disabled students even in other art programs like visual art or.
I think I think it could be a really interesting kind of bit of research to say, well, why are there no disabled? I mean, I know what the answer there is in that a lot of young disabled students are very consciously directed towards the computer for their future careers. It's like, oh, you won't be able to do anything else, use the computer. But tradition, I mean, but historically, if you work in Africa, many of the best musicians are disabled. It's a kind of go-to, and similarly, again, lots of disabled artists, some of the greats as well in Europe.
But for instance, in our program, I lead the master program for dance pedagogy, and I work really closely with the master program for theater pedagogy. And we have international admissions, so that basically anyone from any program around the world who has a bachelor degree or equivalent could apply. But we have never received a single application even from that I remember that we could see that there is this background or of having a disability of any kind. So this is a global.
No, it's. I mean, I hear that as well. I mean, we had given that I've got some experience in this field. I would have expected way more students to apply for the program that we were running, but actually we had very few applications. But we did certainly say on our publicity, disabled students are welcome to apply. And I think putting that up front is really good. Interestingly, that seems to have been sort of airbrushed away now. But I think if your intention is to be open, especially on a master's program, put it right at the top.
Yes.
And I think, and then that begins to circulate because, if people can make a choice and see that they're welcome.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually Gunilla asked a question from Eva, and you have a bit like already answered it.
Yes.
But like what I know, there is only 2 persons with disability, both deaf, who have been graduated from Theatre Academy Helsinki. One dancer and one actor. What do you see the reason is? The negative atmosphere toward difference of the academy, or in the prejudice of people with disability themselves, like the idea no use to apply, I will not be accepted anyway?
Probably both. I would say that in all, University of the Arts Helsinki confirms to very largely, like mainly to Western conception of art, which is either contemporary art or classical, traditional, like for instance in music. And I think that the admission criteria for years, decades, have somehow projected this idea that the main criteria for admission is that you have this kind of artistic quality or ability or how would I say, talent or disposition towards becoming a great artist. That kind of rules out everything that doesn't fit into this conception of what contemporary art, like in a big picture, like the and that then all the other kinds of like inclusive dance art or like non-Western art, for instance, seems to be valued differently, like lower value, so that it's a special project always, or some kind of positive discrimination kind of helping or supporting, or some kind of a benevolent project, and not a valued art as itself. This is my kind of opinion, and it might be biased and it might be wrong, and it's changing luckily there is more discussion now about diversity in conceptions of art. What is art, and how do we value different conceptions of art? So I think we are getting a little bit further, but it's too slow. I think we should really speed up with this discussion, and this is important that we have this panel today.
Yeah, and there is another question to this same subject from Sanna Kuusisto. Why not persons with disabilities in higher art education? Is it the burden of structures? An educational pathway is a good thing, but it is an obstacle if you do not get on the pathway. Should there be better sideways to join to higher education?
There were many questions. Maybe I also put it so I can.
Yeah, and
see
maybe
it.
we kind of like you talked already
To
about
everyone. Maybe someone else
Yeah.
can now, Nora or.
No,
Yes.
no, I mean that there is this, maybe the last one, this should there be better sideways to join to higher education?
And this, yeah. Yes, definitely. And in some programs in Theatre Academy now, the program for acting and our programs, we are renewing the admission criteria and admission procedure, and we are trying to emphasize this kind of, well, I would say diversity in various ways. For us at the moment, the main aim is to reach out to the world outside of Europe and outside of America or United States, the Euro-American field, so that we would get applicants from the Global South, for instance, and Middle East, for instance. But this is exactly the same kind of thinking and procedure applies to all other marginalized groups, I say. So yes, of course, there should be. But I'm not sure what you mean, Sanna, by sideways, and maybe someone else can also join the discussion. I mean, sideways, is it like before the university? Yeah.
Yes, Adam or Nora, if you, or Sanna, do you want to say?
I just want to, yes, that I meant the some other ways to get to the art education exactly before already the high education and also there, because it's a pathway which often starts already before the children go into school.
Yes.
Can I comment? I also feel that before the higher education, the children and young teenage people who are like the art is like a hobby or just the big interest of the children. So it needs a lot of support, and if like in the how do I say? I say this first Finnish, so maybe you can help me then. Että niin kuin peruskoulutasolla ja ala-aste, yläaste ja se koko muu koulutusjärjestelmä, että jos sieltä asti se lapsen kiinnostus ja se suuntautuminen siihen taiteeseen pitäisi olla ehkä vahvempaa, että sitten on rohkeutta pyrkiä korkeammalle koulutukselle, ja välttämättä kaikissa paikoissa, vaikka lasten jopa taideharrastaminen ei kaikilla paikkakunnilla ole mahdollista tai ei ole sellaista ympäristöä, joka tukee siihen, joten se koko tietoisuus kaikessa peruskouluopettajakoulutuksessa vammaisten niin kuin inklusiivisen mukaan ottamiseen siihen, että se pitäisi lähteä jo ihan niin kuin tosi perustasolta ennen kuin että sitten kun on vaihe, että tullaan tai niin kuin valintaan, että pyrkiikö korkeakoulu, niin on sitä rohkeutta pyrkiä sinne.
Nora was
Yes.
talking.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nora was
Yeah.
talking about the opportunities that they should be there from elementary, primary, and secondary level students with disabilities to be introduced and have an experience of art, so that they can grow up in this idea that this is also for them and this is available for them. So when they end up into the space where you are starting to look at your career options, that option is actually there.
Yeah.
In our system of basic education in the arts, which is unique to Finland, it's like the extracurricular arts education offered by often private dance schools, art schools, but they are some of them are governmentally supported. This system is such that there is no possibility for special support for special education pupils. Because in primary school, throughout the school system, there is required by law that if you need support, you for any kind of impaired hearing or whatever disability or impairment you have to have a support, like a person to assist. But in the basic education of the arts, you do not get that. So basic education in the arts, the system in Finland, which is often considered very, very good system, produces this kind of inequality in two ways. That's the one way, at least two ways. One way is this, that there's no support for special education pupils, and that the aim of this system is to prepare the students to professional studies in the arts, which is of course a good thing, and it could, if it would be inclusive, and if there would be access to everyone, that would be a good way. But at this moment, it is exactly exclusive, very much so. And also Arts Equal Research Initiative, also there's this other group, Arts Education for All, that focused on this basic education system in the arts system as a system that generates inequality. And yes, so there's another whole group that have worked in Arts Equal. Very interesting work.
Nora was also mentioning that it has to be implemented in the teacher training level. So the teacher is also able to do it in the classroom with the special education students. Yeah, there is like, the field is very white and Western and ableist. I think that's just a fact. And we all have to work really hard and not have excuses, but work really hard constantly to break that kind of system. We have had such a lovely conversation that we have now a couple of more questions from the audience. So we're going to skip the future. So we're going to skip the question of future dreams. Let's stay present right now, and let's talk about the questions here. Ashley, let me go back, finding it on the chat, was asking when talking with Adam, that she's saying, I get the sense that a great deal of inclusive dance is improvisation based. And improvisation is so important in all dance curriculums. My question is, in this proposed model of very open curriculums, do you see a place for technical training? If so, how might we approach it when we include such diverse embodiments and kinds of dance experience?
Okay. Do you want me to respond to that, or Eva?
Yeah. I think either or. I also have a lot of things about it. But you can start us off, Adam.
It's a big question, and there are all sorts of kind of issues around this. For me, the great gift that inclusive dance brings us is this notion of diversity and how different things support one another in mysterious and delightful ways. For me, that's what interests me in inclusive practice. I wouldn't have stayed in dance were it not for that. Interestingly, technique as it's generally taught within the dance education system is about uniformity. We can dress it up in all sorts of different ways, but technique, the way it's normally taught in dance schools, is about all looking alike, all doing the same thing, all being reliable and constant and drilled. And obviously, when you bring a body that is very, very different into that setting, everything gets disrupted. Now, that said, there are a number of people in the UK who teach very successful technique classes to inclusive groups. And that involves a kind of a broader vocabulary that doesn't involve kind of, that doesn't limit instruction. So the classes are taught in a way that gives everybody information to work with, but doesn't restrict them to moving an arm. So things are taught in a way of elevation or sinking or extending forward or backwards or sideways, but it's a kind of broader interpretation of technique. So there are those kind of elements present and being used by lots of companies. Yeah, so, you know, again, Kanduko, Stopgap, all teach inclusive technique classes. That's not something that particularly interests me. I've never been a great fan of technique, much to my teacher's dismay, even when I was in training. So I think you have to be passionate about inclusion and passionate about technique. For me, there is so much technique involved in improvisation that totally satisfies me. It's just that most people teach improvisation in such a kind of random, chaotic, nonsensical way that it appears to be without technique. And actually, my experience is that it's full of technique, but the technique is really around the understanding of space, the understanding of time, and the understanding of relationship. And all of those things are, there's a lifetime of study just to get your head around those three. You can add all sorts of other things in terms of the technique of somatic understanding or the technique of energetic expression, or however you want to kind of describe it. So I think the technique question does sit there, and for schools that are not set up or kind of in any way prepared for for a disabled student, a disabled student will just wreak havoc in a technique class. And I've seen that happen when a teacher who has come from a formal technical training is confronted by someone in a wheelchair. It can be utterly chaotic and potentially dangerous when you've got people moving at speed and things aren't organized or things aren't understood. That doesn't mean it's not possible, but you have to be passionate about it, and passionate about inclusion and passionate about technique for it to work. So that's
Yeah, thank you, Adam.
This is the thing, I need to say one thing I wrote here. This question already implies that dance improvisation is not a technique, which is another panel. Sorry, go, Kaarina.
Yeah, it's good that these things come up and we can then think the future panels. But there is a question from Kadar. I would like to ask Eva, don't you think asking a disabled immigrant person to apply but should have at least bachelor degree is already demanding?
Yes, I think so. And we are actually going to change our entrance requirements. We have had very, very, very long conversations with our top leadership in our university that from now on we do not have, I mean, there has been always this other way to come in to a master program with 60 credits of university, minimum of 60 credits of university level studies and earn a career in dance or theater or whatever art form you're applying to for the master. But in our case, the 60 credits have had to be in dance. So this is what we are going to change so that it can be in an applicable field. And the reason why it has had to be in dance is that for the teacher qualification in dance, you need to have certain amount of university level dance studies, and we only offer 60 in the 60 credits in the 120 credit 2-year master program. But now we are going to kind of lower. I don't even see it as lowering. It's more like broadening the level. I mean the area where those 60 credits can be. So it can be applicable field. So it opens up possibilities for students from different backgrounds. And it's great to be able to tell that this is going to happen in our next application round. And we really hope to get more, and the aim is to increase diversity in our student body. And the end aim, or the continuing from that, to increase diversity in the field of dance education in Finland and in globally even, but of course that's a huge leap. But anyways, because we see this diversification happening, of course, as we all we cannot not see it in many ways, and we have to become more inclusive and more accessible to more people, more groups.
Thank you, Eva. Yeah. And there was still Sally, I read her comment that I was able to do an MA in the UK and I had left school at 17 with no higher education, but they recognized my experience. Yeah. But hey, before we close, I have to correct myself. I was saying in the beginning that this panel is funded by this Erasmus Plus, but it's also funded by X Dance Festival. So they are both the funders of this. So thank you so much, Adam, Eva, Nora, and all the participants.
Thank you. This was so energizing. Now I want to just keep on doing this. Can we just stay on for 2 more hours? 2 more days?
We just got started. That is very true.
I don't know if there's time just to say one thing.
Of course.
Which is, you know, I always feel like, you know, higher education has become kind of very confused, and what higher education really should be is about growing people. You've got people coming, you know, kids coming from school and they're going into higher education, and during those 3 years they become adult, they become themselves, and our job is, you know, in higher education is to help people grow. And I remember taking a group for a period. I was taking a group of students every year, second year students, to a conservatoire, the conservatoire in Antwerp, where Iris Bush had her program. I would take a group and we would spend a few days working with their students. And my students from a little university in England were always rather intimidated to be going to the conservatoire, because the conservatoire students were so, you know, so wonderful, technical, able dancers. And we would go and we would work together, and they would always go, it would always be a great time. But the thing, and it was true, that the conservatoire dancers were fabulous, could move, could do it, you know, just amazing dancers. But when it came to understanding work, to asking the right questions, to analyzing what was going on, it was students who had had the inclusive practice who were way ahead. And you just go, oh, these students are being educated in life, and these students over here are being educated in dance. And so I guess it's a question of, you know, what we think university is for. Hopefully it's about both things, but it shouldn't be one at the cost of the other, I think. There we go.
That was a great ending. Thanks, Adam, for that. Thank you, everyone, again. Thank you, Sally, for interpreting.
Can I
Thank you,
say my
Eva.
motto for the end? Just
Say it again.
if I can say a motto.
Yes.
That is important for myself, and I can share that, is that for excellence we need gates, for diversity we need bridges.
Let's go and build some bridges, you all.
Hey, and good luck tonight with the football.
Yes, getting ready for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.